Top 5 Best Compact Cameras in 2020. Number 5. Ricoh GR3. I spent a few weeks shooting with the Ricoh GR3, and found it a hugely pleasurable experience. My wife fell in love with it too. I tested the previous generation of this camera a few years back, and while I found the image quality impressive for its size, the sluggish autofocus performance annoyed me. Thankfully, with the green, Ricoh has managed to improve how snappy it all feels. Speaking of snap, there's a focus option on the Ricoh GR3, and other Ricohs, called Snap Focus, which basically forces the camera to immediately focus on a specified distance, increasing in 50 cm increments from 1 meter to 5 meter, then to infinity. You can set up the camera to snap to the predefined focal distance when you fully press the shutter, as opposed to half pressing it, which would engage the regular focusing. This is one of the features that makes the Ricoh GR3 so well suited to street photography. Sure, you can zone focus using any camera, but with this one, you essentially have a zone focusing system and a regular autofocusing system in one shutter button. Ingenious. Going back to improvements over the GR-II, the Ricoh GR3 offers a new 24-megapixel sensor, a significant resolution boost, a sharper lens with macro capabilities, a hybrid autofocus system, better battery life, image stabilization, and a touch screen. The 3-axis sensor stabilization is a welcome addition in practice. I was able to take handheld shots with a shutter speed as slow as 1/2 second, allowing me to blur motion without the use of a tripod. See Kai Wang's video above for an example of how this could be used in the street. The touchscreen on the Ricoh GR3 is great too, snappy and responsive, with that all-important tap to focus and shoot function, allowing for the most inconspicuous photos, perfect for incognito street photography. I keep mentioning how this is the best small digital camera for street photography, but the reality is, I didn't actually get to test it out on the street. Living as I do next to a beach, all I had to practice on were my kids, but it's safe to say that if the Ricoh GR3 can capture them when they're running around, pedestrians would be a cinch. Image quality is excellent, and I particularly like the colors from the JPEG. I shot in vivid with the contrast increased for some additional punch, but there are plenty of nice looking B&W filters to choose from too. Another nod to classic street portraiture, with contrasty, gritty B&W options aplenty. Raw quality is also impressive, with a decent amount of dynamic range from the APS-C sensor. If you're coming from the GR2, you'll be thankful for the 8 additional megapixels, which make images sharper, as well as give you the ability to crop. The 18.3mm, 28mm equivalent, lens width is unchanged, and I'm happy about that. 28mm is fun and easy to shoot, with minimal distortion and a unique perspective which can immerse the viewer into the shot, without feeling too wide. You can always crop into the image in post, thanks to the additional megapixels too. As for the design and ergonomics, this is what I love the most about the Ricoh GR3. It's the most stealth camera I've ever come across. Minimal branding, buttons that blend into the body, and a rubberized grip that's molded perfectly to your fingers. Sony really should take a leaf out of Ricoh's book there, to avoid more slippery camera offerings. The Ricoh GR3 is the smallest, lightest digital camera I've ever used, but it still retains excellent ergonomics, which isn't an easy task. It's grippy enough to be used one-handed all day long, and can slide inside a shirt pocket. Yes, you read that right, shirt pocket. This is truly a miniature marvel of a camera. So what don't I like about it? Well, the battery life could be better. I got 280 shots per charge, and I do wish the touch screen flipped, but then again, that would probably ruin the overall design. It's also not the best at focusing in low light, and the LCD, despite being beautifully sharp, tends to reflect a lot in bright sunlight. Since there's no viewfinder, this can sometimes be annoying. Also, the camera seems to take a split second to render images on the LCD during playback. It's barely perceptible at first, but once you see it, it's hard not to notice it again. All in all though, I'm struggling to find bigger reasons not to love this camera. Don't let the Ricoh GR3 be the camera you've never heard of. Trust me, it's a truly unique product, and one that deserves a lot more of the limelight than it receives. Coming in number 4. Canon PowerShot G7X Mark II. The hugely popular Canon PowerShot series attracts many photographers of all standards, due mainly to the promise of great image quality. Those fabled Canon colors and useful features trickled down from their Pro line, all for at attractive prices. With the Canon PowerShot G7X Mark II, Canon has made a big improvement over the first iteration, with a host of great features, and still managed to keep the price nice and low. Check here if you can still get it under $500. The design remains largely unchanged from its predecessor, with the most notable addition, at least for me, with my large hands and clumsy fingers, is the new grip, which is molded, tactile and perfectly placed on the front and rear of the body. Due to the pocketable dimensions of the Canon G7X Mark II, the grip is a welcome addition, and makes for a comfortable shooting experience, not to mention a lot more security when holding it with one hand for long periods. The LCD screen can now also be articulated downward by a full 45 degrees, allowing you to hold the camera above your head and compose for an interesting viewpoint. The screen still faces the front, and does so in one quick and simple action which you can perform with one hand. Face detection does a fine job for the all-important selfie. The touch screen itself is a joy to use, responsive, fast and full-featured, far better than the crippled Sony touchscreen offering. Being able to tap any menu item seems logical in 2020, and is an enjoyable way to navigate the camera. One other nice feature of the Canon GX7 II is the lens control ring, which can be easily customized to control a range of functions, from the 3 components of the exposure triangle, down to aspect ratio or the zoom. This allows for a practical and enjoyable shooting experience, with one hand controlling the shutter button and the other left to support the camera and adjust the lens ring. Image quality is excellent, as we have come to expect from the world leader in camera imaging technology. Color rendition is excellent, with skin tones having that warm, slightly reddish tone to them, typical of Canon files. The 20 MGA pixels BSI CMOS sensor allows you to print decent-sized photos, or crop in on shots during editing with minimal loss in quality. When the light begins to drop, you have 2 options with the Canon G7X Mark II: use the pop-up flash, or crank up that ISO dial, which is either within the menu, or assigned to the lens ring. I found that I could shoot up to around ISO 800 comfortably, with noise creeping in after that, pretty much standard for a 1-inch sensor. Thankfully, there's still a decent amount of image data in the RAWs, so if you know what you're doing with post-production, it's pretty easy to salvage even a noisy image. The one below was taken at ISO 10,000, but with a quick tweak in Lightroom using the texture slider, the black and white edit looks fine. Autofocus performance is good, with face tracking working okay during testing. Don't underestimate the importance of this feature. Trying to chase a subject around the screen with a single AF point is a painful experience. Burst mode is impressive, with RAW and JPEG shooting over 8 FPS with one shot AF, or around 5 with servo. A couple of caveats here, though: tracking doesn't seem to work while using burst mode, and it takes a while for the buffer to clear, during which time the camera's playback or settings mode are frozen. The f1.8 to 2.8 lens is fast for a camera of these dimensions, allowing you to blur the background relatively easily. It should be remembered, however, that the maximum aperture of f1.8 can only be used before zooming the lens, i.e. at 24 mm. This is the sacrifice with most zoom lenses found on small digital cameras, with the plus side being just how small the camera can be when the lens is retracted. The Canon G7X Mark II is the smallest camera on test, and only marginally heavier than the next smallest option from Ricoh. As for battery life, there's a large improvement from its predecessor, but at around 270 shots during testing per charge still puts the Canon G7X Mark II behind some of its competition. Thankfully, spare batteries are relatively inexpensive, with numerous third-party options available. Controlling the camera with the Canon Camera Connect app was painless, and worked well for controlling the camera from a distance, or simply transferring JPEGs to my iPhone. You can also use the app to track your location while shooting, although this can quickly drain the battery. Unfortunately, there's no 4K video, nor mic/headphone jacks, but 1080p video quality looks nice nevertheless. Overall, I found the G7X Mark II enjoyable and intuitive to shoot, with the biggest pluses for me being its overall responsiveness and the impressive image quality. It's the kind of camera that packs enough performance to warrant using it over your smartphone, but still retains the dimensions to ensure it's always in your pocket. Here in 2020, we're fortunate to be able to get a great camera for under $500. If you're on a tight budget, this is your answer. Coming in number 3. Fujifilm X100F. A versatile point-and-shoot camera in an extremely pocketable format, the Fujifilm X100F is best known for its DSLR quality APS-C sensor and its wide-angle 35mm f2.0 fixed focus lens. The lens contains an in-lens ND filter so you can leave your camera at a higher aperture for longer. And it won't take you long to appreciate the 1/4000 second leaf shutter, which makes for an exceptionally quiet shooting experience. Finally, you'll love the hybrid optical/electronic viewfinder, which eliminates shooting difficulties when there's glare. The Fujifilm X100F is one of the best compact cameras out there for street and travel photography. Check out the adaptable Fujifilm X100F camera today. Coming in number 2. Ricoh GR Mark III. The Ricoh GR Mark III is a stealthy, versatile compact camera that's so pocketable it'll be the smallest and lightest camera you'll ever use. Its 24-megapixel APS-C CMOS sensor packs a punch, but it goes a step further, providing you the ability to shoot in RAW for better editing. A variety of features make this a fantastic camera for street photography. To start, you have the sharp 28mm wide-angle fixed lens. Then there's the in-body image stabilization that ensures you can take handheld shots at relatively slow shutter speeds without a tripod. Couple that with a snap focus option that ensures fast focus by forcing the camera to fix on a specified distance, and you're onto a winner. To cap it all off, it has Wi-Fi connectivity so you can immediately share your snaps to the world. Check out the stealthy Ricoh GR3 today. Coming in number 1. Sony RX100. If you're number 7 in a lineup of one of the most popular compact camera series of all time, you have a lot to live up to. Fortunately, the Sony RX100 doesn't disappoint. I spent a few weeks shooting this powerful little camera for a full Sony RX100 review, and have decided to name it the top compact camera of 2020, out of so many other great products on offer. First off, let's get the price out of the way. The Sony RX100, aka the Sony PowerShot RX100, is definitely an investment. Despite being expensive, I do actually think it's good value for money. There's just so much packed into its svelte, pocketable body you can actually slip it into the front pocket of your jeans. Top of the list is the incredible zoom lens, a 24 to 200mm, wide to telephoto equivalent range that'll leave your jaw on the floor. Check out the image below for what I mean. I also love the fact that LCD displays the optical zoom focal length as you're zooming, so you can set it to 35mm for example, and leave it there if that's your preference when shooting primes. This is what I found myself doing, since I rarely shoot at 24mm. Autofocus performance is incredible, as you can expect from a Sony PowerShot camera. There are a confusing amount of AF options and modes, but after you find the one you want and set up a button to control IAF, it's pretty hard to actually miss a moment. Taking photos of our fast-moving kids is a cinch. Just point the Sony RX100 in their general direction, hold down the IAF button for one of the 357 phase and 425 contrast AF points to lock onto the nearest face, and fire away at a frankly ridiculous 90 fps. Nothing can escape your shutter. This is a huge step up from the Sony RX100, which had 315 phase AF points, 25 contrast AF points, and a maximum burst mode of 24 fps. Image quality is great, whether shooting JPEG or RAW. The lens is sharp across its frame, and dynamic range is decent too. Shooting at low ISOs and underexposing the image allows you to bring back a good amount of shadow data later in Lightroom. In practice, shooting at ISO 125 and brightening in post was similar to having shot at ISO 800 to 1600 and nailing the exposure. High ISO performance is decent, with clean images up to 1600, then quickly degrading after 2000 as is expected on a camera with a 1-inch CMOS sensor. Startup time is fast, as is the zoom speed. I also love the ability to set the lens ring up as a custom function. I had mine as exposure compensation, so shooting in aperture priority was intuitive and fun. Speaking of aperture, the only slight disappointment is the variable aperture of f2.8 to 4.5. The RX100 featured f1.8 to 2.8, but the focal range was limited to a 24 to 70 mm equivalent. The Sony RX100 offers a tilting touchscreen, albeit a limited one. You're able to touch to change AF points, focus, then shoot is a really handy feature for capturing candid moments, especially when combined with the tilting display. On the 6 the tilt is 90 degrees down and 180 degrees up, making it perfect for vlogging. The 7 also offers Fast AF, a new 4K video HDR mode, 4-stop image stabilization, active steady shot for video recording and a larger buffer 233 vs the 5's already impressive 150. The shot below was one of about 30 in quick succession. My son was actually sprinting along the rope bridge, and the RX100 didn't miss a beat with the focus. For some, having a 24 to 200 mm zoom lens in your pocket will be reason enough to invest in the latest Sony RX100 model. It really is incredible having such range at your disposal, and as long as you are in decent light, shooting at 200 mm, and f4.5, yields some great bokeh. Image stabilization also helps a lot too. I'm not even a big fan of zoom lenses, preferring normally to zoom with my feet, but I found myself constantly zooming in and out with this fun little camera, often just to see how far I could see. How about the cons of the Sony RX100? Well, holding it is akin to holding a wet bar of soap. Why on earth Sony would design such an incredible camera and make it have all the ergonomics of a pane of glass is beyond me. The first thing I'd recommend you do is purchase this grip, at least it's cheap. Another annoying aspect related to ergonomics is the lack of a regular strap eyelet. There's only the tiny hole for the included wrist strap, which seems pretty flimsy. Then there's the battery life, which is pretty poor at around 260 shots or 30 minutes 4K video per charge. On the plus side, you can charge the camera via micro USB, and spare batteries are affordable. Unusually, the camera doesn't come with a dedicated charger either, but third-party options like this one are cheap too. The pop-up LCD is good in bright sunlight and I'm glad they included it, but I didn't find myself using it much. Otherwise it's a little cramped, as is to be expected on a camera of this size. Whether you're a fan of video or not, the 960 FPS incredible high frame rate mode will leave your jaw on the floor, and make you want to film everything to see how it looks when played back slow-mo. A first for the RX100 series is the inclusion of a 3.5mm mic jack for those that are serious about video. Overall, the Sony RX100 is a helluva lot of camera squeezed into something the size of a deck of playing cards. The zoom range is astounding, autofocus performance mind-boggling, and frame rate something that no other compact camera can match. If you're looking for a feature-packed camera with incredible stills and 4K video performance, that's so small that you can have it in your pocket every day and not even notice it's there, look no further. This is it.